All right, welcome back to Is It Crazy or Is It God?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to IICIIG. You know, well, say that's the short version, the hashtag.
Hashtag IICIIG, IICIIG. James is crazy. That's why I was laughing at the top because I love his energy though. Yeah. So anyway, welcome to Is It Crazy Is It God? This is a new set. Actually, what's funny is we're playing around with some techniques and some things that we're exploring with. So today we're only shooting with one microphone instead of two. Yeah. And we're trying to just improve the sound quality. We're learning more and more about podcasting and about how to put together a better product. So you're going to see us trying some things out over the next probably at least a few weeks.
Maybe
until we
years.
Hey, listen, we're just going to continuously try to get better. Yeah. But so...
for you guys.
Yeah. It's a little weird though because I like to have my earphones in so I can hear better. But you know,
we're about to fix that.
Listen, we're gonna rock with this. I can still hear. Yeah. But anyway, so how was your week this week?
Oh, you just like ask me first. That's okay.
I mean, hey, I'm quick.
My week was good actually. It started off a bit. Not rocky, but like, so Monday I didn't, we created this habit. I started going back to the gym, and we both have, and we both have, we're reading the Bible with more intent.
I'd like to clear that up, but you go right ahead.
Yeah,
first.
well, when I mean more intent, it's just I
think we're reading the Bible more consistently and evenly within our schedule.
Yes.
I don't want to mess up your spiel, but I'll explain more later.
Yeah.
With more intent, that's I think we're reading it with just as much intent. I just think we have a better schedule.
We have a better schedule, and we're able to.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to mess it up. Back to you.
Yes, you did.
Back to you, James.
So not with more intent. Let's just say with.
I think also just with more consistency.
More consistency, and we're digesting it more.
We're digesting it better.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we're digesting
because of the schedule, because of the reading schedule.
Because of the reading schedule.
I'll clear it up later.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I said what I said.
Okay.
So so Monday usually starts it off, and it starts off the week, and you want your Monday to be really good. And your Monday, we go to the gym, and it's phenomenal, right? It's Monday, so it didn't happen good. I'll say it. I overslept, and I was like, I didn't make it to the gym. Now, here's the difference of how reading the Bible and listening to my wife in real time is slowly making me grow. So she was like, listen, don't worry about it. Adjust your schedule. It happens. You've been going hard. I said, okay. Because here's the thing, I can only speak from experience, but I'm the hardest on myself. I'm my hardest critic. I push myself to the max, and so that's it, right? So Tuesday, I said, you know what? Instead of, I usually go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now I'm gonna do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And I adjusted it, and my week got off. We started out interesting, and it ended up phenomenal. So that's how my week went. So I'm trying to be accountable and try to listen and adapt in the moment. You want to stay in the moment. So that moment, I was like, I overslept. But did I? I did. Take accountability. But now adjust your week and wake up Tuesday and go to the gym. You can still get your gym days in, but you have to take accountability and adjust your time. And, everything is going good. So, yeah, I'm just starting to learn, stay in the moment, focus, listen, and adjust. So that's how, that's how my week went.
That's pretty amazing. I've obviously witnessed this week with you, and I'm just picking something else up from you kind of recapping it, which was that accountability part. Like obviously I am not in your brain. I don't know how this is, working within, but it's so funny because I could just speak from my own experiences and observations of how the world works. It's hard to adjust when you haven't first taken accountability. So, I mean, I'm sure all that happened inside of you, and I witnessed you doing the things, but obviously I couldn't say like, yeah, I saw you take accountability. But obviously that's what happened. But it's so funny because I think that's a step that is often missed by others, including myself. It's like if you never take the accountability part, right, then why would you ever make the adjustment, right? Like, unless you just kind of like skipping over it. And then I feel like that's maybe when it doesn't stick. When you take the accountability and you say, you know what, I can do this better, or this is how it went and this is how I want to pivot. That's what keeps the pivot. That's what keeps that adjustment like solid, I think. So that's just something I was just picking up out of what you just said. But yeah, I mean, hey, great. That's well done. Great example to share with us.
How was your week?
It's so funny because all the weeks just meld into each other. My week was good. I definitely. What did I learn this week? I'm still learning my lesson this week. So I was. I'm grateful to have gone to the gym with you. There was one day there that I missed, but I don't think it was like a gym day. I think you were just
I went
So anyway,
you didn't.
But I went all the 3 days that we said we were gonna go this week, and I've just been having a great time listening to this new album I'm listening to. It's awesome. It's just giving me all the energy. So there's that, and then I'm learning some personal lessons within myself, just about having tenacity, keeping yourself focused, not letting things throw you off balance, and keeping your eye on the ball. So I learned a lot actually from reading. So when James was saying earlier, and I know he said what he said, and it was accurate, I just wanted to clear up that we're reading this with the intent of understanding it. That has not changed. However, what did fluctuate, especially in the beginning, before we had really solidified our reading schedule, was that sometimes we would read 3 or 4 times a week in the mornings, and then sometimes our schedule would be thrown off, and we would be like reading in 2 sessions in 2 days. And there was a couple times there that I think we read all of our reading for the week in one sitting, right? Which was like fine, and we got it and we understood it, but it was just not ideal for a couple of reasons. Number one, for me, just having that word on me in the morning. Like, there are times where, well, I would say probably 60 to 70% of the time, like, getting out of bed is like my first challenge of the day. But just knowing that, like, okay, you're gonna get up and you're gonna do this routine, it just provides some sense of like, okay, well, I know how to do that. Like, this is easy, and it gets me started. Having the Bible readings at the top of the day like that. So typically we'll do workout and then read, and then the days we're not going into the gym, we'll just read. You do your morning ritual with your, toothpaste and all that stuff. And then we'll read. Having that be like the first one of the first things I do really just spreads itself over my entire day. And a lot of times if I get up with like an attitude or just kind of like not looking forward to something in the day, and I get that word spread over me in the day, it lasts throughout the day. It's like a blessing to read every day. Also, when we taking our time like that and we're not just trying to like get through the reading because that's what we said we were going to do, but we're actually like taking those 20 to 30 minutes to like absorb, go back, highlight, discuss. It's like, did you just read that? Go back and see. I don't think I got that. When you're able to do all of that, you're absorbing it more, and we even find ourselves talking about the verses throughout the day, like oh yeah, that's like Gideon, or like whatever, and so that for that reason, it's pretty awesome to have it in a scheduled, where we're reading it in more than one session. It's better to read it 4 times a week and take your time than it is to jam pack it into 2 or one day. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, my week was good. My week was good. So yeah, that's it.
I like it. So let's get into it, guys. So
yes, let's.
We finished Joshua.
Yes, we finished Joshua this week.
Yep, and we started Judges. Mm-hmm. So Joshua. Joshua 22 to 24, right? So it's the eastern tribes, the return home, and then the death of Joshua. So unfortunately, Joshua moves on, and he passes away. So nothing really stood out to me. I think that it was, basically everybody is, in 23 he does say a charge where he said that he is 23:4. Behold, Joshua 23 verse 4. Behold, I have allotted to you as an inheritance for your tribes those nations that remain among all the nations that I've already cut off from the Jordan to the great sea in the west. The Lord your God will push them back before you and drive them out of your sight. Like he's saying that after all this, you're now in the promised land. Just make sure that as long as you're obedient, you trust God, he's going to drive, nothing can stand in your way. You're going to drive all the people out that's in front of you. And then Josh passes away. Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, Joshua was a good, I don't want to say it was short, but it was a good book to finally maybe kind of like the end of a journey where the God fulfilled his promise finally to the Israelites that has been waiting to get to the promised land.
Yeah.
So it's good to see the journey, come to a completion. Now it's about sustaining in the promised land and following God's commandments and rules and guidance. Now that he's given you this promised land, and like the Israelites, like us all, especially like me, I'm seeing myself more and more the more I read this, and we'll get to Judges later. I see about a lot of myself in Judges.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Pertaining to Joshua's last speech, if we tried to tell people today to throw out their little Buddhas, how would they respond?
I thought that was a little offensive.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear on this channel that, obviously we're Christian, but we don't we're not downplaying anybody else's beliefs or their religion. Like, I feel God, if you have a presence of God in your life and you however you do that, then that's your journey. So I think that was a little offensive the way the question was phrased.
Yeah.
But I guess the gist of it is, how would people? I mean, what do you think? That's not the point, but I think if the gist of the question is, if Joshua was saying to people today to toss their false idols, the things that they're worshiping that aren't pertaining to God, how would they respond? All right, I'm gonna be real. I think that people would be offended and they would be all up in arms. We have this cancel culture today that and I'll go beyond cancel culture, because it's not even necessarily just cancel culture. It's this idea that, like, if you get offended by something, then someone automatically owes you an apology. And I think that, for me specifically, my belief is that that's not always an accurate response. Like, just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that someone owes you an apology. Sometimes you have to really check what offends you. If a lot of things offend you, things that you're not even doing anything about, right? You're like, this is not even your charge or your passion in life. But if you find that so many things are offensive to you, then I mean that's a tough way to live, because you're going to constantly be offended by whoever chooses to offend you, or whoever doesn't. Because a lot of times people take offense to things that weren't even meant to be offensive. They were just unfortunate casual comments, or or even ignorant comments. But if you're choosing to be offended by everything, or not even everything, but if you're choosing to be offended by lots of things, then, and you're not even doing anything about it to, like, educate people or make change or bring peace or whatever it is, right? Then it's kind of a waste of your time. You're just constantly going to be distracted from whatever it is you were sent here to do, because there's so much that people will do intentionally to hurt you, that if you're just going to be offended by people saying what they feel, then that's just a lot of strife. I mean, but listen, I digress. I think that people will respond with offense and with, like, campaigning against Joshua. I think people would say, oh, what do you mean throw out my false idol? Like, of course they wouldn't say false idol. They would say whatever it is. If you were worshiping, boxes of tissues or whatever. If you're worshiping gold or lip glosses, right? Or fame or whatever it is, and someone told you, like, God doesn't want that for you, and whatever. I think people these days would get offended and they would start campaigns against Joshua to say, like, he's always, doing this or whatever. They would try to find some dirt on him to make him less credible or seem less credible. That's what I think. I think that a lot of people us as a society, we don't really, like, listen to the words that people say a lot and, like, apply them to, like, weigh them against what we believe is the truth. We just, like, pick people apart. We pick apart their ideas and their opinions, and we don't even take them as opinions. We take them as offense. It's not even, if somebody has an opinion that differs from yours, it doesn't make it true. So why can't they just have that thought and you have yours and we just coexist? Like, these are my thoughts. This is not something that's in the Bible, but I'm just answering the question. Like, I think people would take offense, make a big deal about it, campaign against Joshua, have him lose his Instagram account, right? Like, he might be on the news or he might get dragged, and people will comment 1,000 comments about how Joshua's so this or that because he's telling you to throw away your false idols. I think that's what would happen these days.
Yeah. I think that he's out of there, man. I think if you try to tell people today, stop worshiping their false idols, they're going to chastise them. And it happens in our society all the time. It is what it is. So, the difference between back in Joshua in the Bible and now? Nothing. I think the only difference is that we have just more accessibility. So he will be getting dragged on Facebook, on Instagram, all social media, because it heightens everything.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what will happen, and then we'll try to cancel it. But you got to think, man, they try to cancel everybody. They try to cancel Jesus to this day.
Yeah.
They try to, listen, guys, you have to understand, man, that if you believe in what we believe, I mean, if you believe in the Bible, you believe in Jesus Christ, the world is going to meet you with opposition. This is what you have to get used to and get realized. You're gonna have some people praise you. You're gonna have some people not praise you, and that doesn't matter who you are. You know, that's just what it is. Like, I don't even understand how people didn't like Jesus, but you know, when you read about what he did, you're like, people didn't like Jesus, people didn't like Martin Luther King, people didn't like Harriet Tubman. Like, we could just keep going through every historical figure that people didn't like, and then you realize, like, oh man, he was beloved. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. So Joshua would have been beloved. He would have been canceled. And then 50 years later, people would have been like, yeah, man, that Joshua was awesome. What?
Yeah.
During the time, nobody liked him. So that just happens nowadays. And it happens more and more. But you just have to remember that what God told Joshua, be courageous.
Be strong and courageous.
Be strong and courageous. You'll be all right. But he would have been just like every great person, chastised, and you know. I do agree with you though. Like, people, I think, take offense, and you know, it says it in the Bible all the time. Like, you gotta focus on what God has planned for you. You can't worry about all the outside noise, but it's so difficult to do because that is our nature.
You know, it was something I wanted to bring up there about them, sort of like how we believe that they would have canceled Joshua if he would have said to throw away the false idols. In Joshua 24:21, it says the people said to Joshua, "No, but we will serve only the Lord." Yeah. So like, as he's like recapping before he passes away, and he's like, "Look, guys, we've been told you a few times. Moses was saying it. Like, if you do this, when you start to serve other gods, you're going to be punished, and here's what's going to happen." And then so he got them to give them their word. He didn't get them to give them their word. Yeah. They just gave him their word. Like, "Oh no, we're not going to do that. You already know how we roll."
Yeah. And
they tried to make him like, "Oh yeah, we got it. Yep. Worship God only, no false idols." It's like they had been told this whole time when they were going through the wilderness, when they were getting to the promised land, like, you know, drive out the Canaanites and take your place and don't worship false idols. And then when it happened, even though they said that they wouldn't, they did. And then I feel that they would turn around and blame Joshua. It's like, when you say it just the way you just said it about staying focused, you got to really look at what people are saying and how it, like, what the word says and how it applies to you. Right? And so if somebody says something, and you brought this up and kind of brushed over, but I don't know why, I just want to get into this real quick. One of the reasons that people probably hated Jesus was because he was telling the truth. And when people hear the truth and they find that they're on the other side of it, they have a decision to make, right? If they admit it, then it's like, oh wow, you're right and I'm wrong. Like, what comes after that statement? Right? Once you acknowledge it, then you have to change. So I think one of the reasons, and I don't know because we haven't gotten there yet, and I'm just making a statement because I think that's what happens with people, is that you're not examining God's word against your own actions and your own lifestyle, you're just sitting in the offense. You're sitting in the shame of it, and you want to drive out the shame, but you're not really reflecting on yourself, right? That's the hard part. That's the hard part. I can say that from personal experience, to actually look at yourself and be like, I am better than this. I can do better, right? And like, well, how? Okay, well, I can stop doing this because that's going to be hard, or I can start doing this. That's going to be challenging. But I think people don't like to do that, and it's much easier, especially in larger numbers, to just say, oh, well, we're not wrong, they're wrong. Let's get rid of them. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, I don't know where that came from. I
mean, it's real.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so now we're in Judges. And Judges is very interesting, and it's about repeated habits. And I know I said earlier, the Israelites remind me of what I'm doing.
Man, they remind me of me. Yeah. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they do, man. And it's so. I mean, that's my whole intent of reading the Bible, is to, digest it and apply it to my life, right? And then y'all get to see it in real time. Applies it to her life, and then we talk about it.
I'm just not promising the real time behind the scenes like he is. But yeah, for sure.
Y'all see it in real time, man. Just don't let her gas you up. You see it, right? Like, so, and you should just be honest, right? Just be honest with yourself. Like, and I'm going to tell y'all right now, when we get into this Judges, it's a lot of things I was like, dang, I just did that a couple years ago, or an example of I did it last week, and but back then in Judges, it's a rotating circle. It's a circle of life. All right, let me stop.
Oh, okay.
So it's a rotating circle of where the Israelites. This is what Judges is about. After Moses said, listen, look, follow God, and you're good. Follow His will, follow His laws, you're good. Joshua says the same thing. If you don't, you're going to be cursed. So what happens is they stop following God. Then they worship a false idol. Then they get captured by either they basically get captured and oppressed. Then they ask God for help. God sends them a judge. The judge helps them get out of the oppression they were in. Then they chill. And then they come back and do the same thing over and again. And it's a cycle.
It's a cycle. And that's where I can say, specifically pertaining to me, that I can identify, because I've been through so many like cyclical just like struggles of like, man, you still doing that? And it's like every time I just ask for help and God delivers, and then I'm back to doing the same thing, or not even necessarily the same thing, but just messing up in another way. And it's probably I'm never going to be perfect, but it's just, you definitely don't want to be learning the same lesson over and over. One thing I wanted to point out though is, before these things, the judges even started to appear, what happened was the Israelites were supposed to drive out the Canaanites. So they never really finished that work. Like they some of them were killed. Like some of them, when they were having these battles, some of the Canaanites were being killed through the battles, and some of them were being driven out of the land. But a lot of times you would see in Joshua, when we were reading, that, this person took over the land, or the Israelites took over the land, but they let some of the Canaanites stay. Or these people took over the land, but the Canaanites had iron chariots, so they just made them into, servants. Or these people took over the land, but, right? When it was like a clear direction, it was a clear direction that was given from Moses. Like, look, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. And so you start to see that the little things that seemed like they didn't matter came back, and they were tempted by the Canaanites, and they took on their false idols. So
which is just to enhance what you said. We were seeing it first. They were driving it out, and we were just seeing them commingle more and more. And more, and then one time they were just, they were just like, oh, we'll just let them stay.
We'll just let them stay. It's so funny. I'm telling you the truth right now. We do not read these questions beforehand. No. It's just natural conversation. But I just glanced down at the first question, and we kind of already answered it just
That's
now. But
awesome.
It's wild that happens because we're not like, we make a good point of like, let's do the reading, let's do a little bit of study, and then like let's just let the questions bring about like natural conversation.
Yeah, because it's authentic when you. I don't want to prep questions.
But then what's interesting, like obviously we did the reading, so the question is going to go along with the reading. So as we're talking about what we read, it's going to probably pertain to the question just by way of like, the recapping with the question. So anyway, but this is interesting because the question is
Judges 1-3, like I just explained, right? It's the wars after the death of Joshua, the unheeded warnings and the defeat. And then God starts naming the judges. So the first 3 judges are Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar. So, just like I said with the cycle, Israelites go into, I don't know what they're doing, man. They just forget the Lord. And we do. I do that. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes I'll be like, I complain after he's giving me manna. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm hungry. It's some fruit right there. Or I'll complain, just the simple things. And like not realizing that, God woke you up. You're not even living or in the same environment or working at the same place that you were 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So just be very thankful for where you're at now. So not only is I'm trying to stop complaining, but then I notice this cycle that they're in, and it's like, man, what they say, break the cycle. That's what I'm trying I'm trying to do it. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to be accountable in the moment and realize it and then adjust instead of waiting for the Canaanites to capture me. And then I pray to God when something bad happens. It saves me. I'm trying to continuously pray and thank Him when the good happens as well.
Yeah.
Just to stay focused in the moment. With God, that's what it boils down to. Because if you don't, you get distracted.
You get distracted, and you kind of like stay in the same place. It's kind of like going through the wilderness, right? Like you're just stuck. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how far could the Israelites have grown as a society if they weren't constantly going through the same thing? We think about our lives just individually and like our own accomplishments and even our mortality, and it's like, what are you doing that's going to contribute to the well-being or the advancement of society? And if you're just constantly like dealing with the same struggles and just constantly succumbing to your flesh, it's like, what's the point, really? Yeah. You're not growing. You're just going through the same thing. And I'm saying this for me. We had a joke going last week that I just have to share because we sometimes talk about like, some of the stuff that we watch. And we got into this conversation about alternate universes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Man.
And we came up with this thing where we're like, what if, there's a alternate universe, and and they're just looking at us on Earth like, man, they're just a lost cause. Like they're killing their planet. They're never gonna get out here to these galaxies. They can't even get off their own planet. Like, I'm not saying that that's the point, but my thought is like, sometimes I look at us like that on Earth because like we're fighting wars against each other. We're not really like advancing together. It's always competition. We're killing the Earth, right? And I mean, this is not funny, but you know, there's mass shootings, there's child, slavery, there's child, what do they call it? Not even pedophilia, but the trafficking.
Child trafficking.
The trafficking.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things that are happening, like how could we even focus on like putting all our energies together and advancing forward when we're so divided in trying to figure out like how to stay safe amongst each other? So, I kind of am looking at the Israelites, back then, and it's still kind of like playing out now. And it's not just all of us together as a society, but it's us individually. We're just keeping on struggling through our own issues, but instead of like advancing past them, sometimes we're just kind of like sitting in our own mess, getting back to the same place, praying ourselves out of it. God blesses you beyond that, and then you go back to doing the same thing. So
yeah, that's how it is.
We're all doing, all of us have some struggles, but it's just, thank God. God is so good. He's still keeping us.
Still, every time. Every time I mess up, I know that I can go back. That is such a great crutch.
It is.
I'm going to continue to do it.
I know, but it's... Yeah, that's in our nature. But whatever, let's just keep it going.
All right, in the question in the end of chapter 1, it becomes an issue on a defeated people that were not driven out. Why didn't God want them there?
In the end of the chapter, it becomes an issue that the defeated people were not driven out. Why didn't God want them there?
Yeah, we answered.
It was because they're going to taint and tempt the Israelites with a less than clean culture. And you gotta remember, the Israelites were lost in the wilderness for at least 40 years, I think. They had come out of Egypt, and they were God's people. And they were promised this promised land back from Abram, right? Or Israel. They were promised.
It was Abram.
They were promised this land. They were promised this life, and God fulfilled it for them. And God already knew they were going to go and be disobedient after that, and He did anyway. So He gave them what He had promised them, and they were told several times, like at Mount Sinai, when Moses came down the mountain and gave the commandments. It was like they were being almost like trained like a boot camp. Like, this is how God wants you to live. This is how God wants you to live. And at every turn, it was the complaining, it was the rebellion, it was the things that all of us humans do. And then, I mean, just to put the candy coating on it, when Joshua was about to die, and they were like, oh yeah, we got it, we're not gonna bet we got this. And then that's why God didn't want the Canaanites there. If I could just take it to another point on how I would just apply this to my own life. It's so funny how I always talk about, like, with the people who know me, about energy, right? Like, you have to protect your energy, because if you're exposing yourself to negativity on a regular basis, it could be a person, it could be a show you like to watch, it could be a particular social media account or something like that, feed, whatever. It could be a subject that whatever it is that you're allowing to infiltrate your mindset, your energy base, right? If it's taking away from you and it's not putting anything back, I think it's really, wise to consider what you're getting from it. Because once you let your energy get sucked out of you, now that's a distraction. It costs you more than just the time you spent doing it. It costs you your energy. It costs you sometimes over time your mindset. And so I only bring that up to say, why didn't God want them there? It's because he knew that they were going to be distracted from their training, right? Like, he knew that the Israelites had been given a direct, commandment. They had a list of commandments. They understood exactly how God wanted them to live. They had built the tabernacle. They traveled with the tabernacle. They knew how to do sacrifices, peace offerings, all this stuff. They knew how God wanted them to live. And then they go into this new land, and because they just didn't follow one of those specific rules of like, drive out the Canaanites, don't mingle and live amongst them, now that became the slow unraveling of their customs, of the things that God told them that they needed to do for them. And so I just liken that to sometimes, like, I know for me, it's negativity. It's sometimes some of these reality shows that I be liking to watch. And though it seems to me in the moment that it's entertaining me, when I look at it at the end of the day or the end of the week, when I look back at what it cost me, it wasn't just that 30 minutes, right? Because likely one episode leads to the next episode, leads to me scrolling, or looking something up. So that's like 4 hours. But also, what could I have been doing with that 4 hours, right? I could have been studying. I could have been filming for my other channel. I could have been reading some of these books that we have. I could have been, beefing myself, listening to music, like worshiping. I could have been worshiping, right? But that's not the mindset you're in. You sit there and watch one of these, love and whatever. I don't want to name a specific show, but you sit here and watch one of the shows that are entertaining, and it might not even be about love. It could be about anything. But if it's hitting you in a negative way and it's not adding something to you, I'm talking to myself right now. It's like, not only does it cost you the time that you're watching it, but it's affecting your mindset. You're not just going to sit there after 3 hours of watching that and be like, I think I'll pick up my Bible and listen to some praise music. It's like, no, you're not in that mindset. You know what I mean? Now you're driven down another path, and then the next thing you know, you're tired. And then whatever you go to sleep thinking about, you're probably going to be on that next morning. You're constantly feeding your brain. And so this is something that I'm learning, and I'm still haven't even really applied all of the information that I've absorbed. But if you're constantly feeding your brain trash, it's going to continue to produce things that keep you distracted from what you're supposed to be doing. This is a whole other conversation, but I just had to go there because that's why God didn't want them there. Because it's like, I told you what I wanted you to do. This one little tweak that you made ended up costing you your overall peace. Because now we aren't judges. You're doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe that wouldn't have happened if you had driven the Canaanites out. Right?
So it's funny. So the first thing is, it's about listening. They didn't listen to God. He was like, listen. They were like, okay. And it's funny how it slowly happened. And that's what happens in life. They say you don't mix certain things, right? They say oil and water, or some things you naturally need to have another thing to complete it. Like, you need for a book, you need paper, or it can be digital, but you have to have words to have a book, right? A cake, you not necessarily need eggs, but you need some type of flour and some type of binding agent. I know some people make cakes without eggs, but you use oats, or you use oat milk, or you use a binding agent, right? So after all that work they put in, now it starts to get tainted. And over time, you don't even notice it until you end up becoming that person that you don't like, or that person that you were meant to drive out. You eventually ended up becoming them because you've let them in your door, right? You've let them inside of your energy. You let them inside of your circle, and God told you don't do it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you just find yourself in a bad situation. Like, dang it! How did I end up here?
How did I get here? How many times have you asked yourself that?
So
and
many
you think
times.
about in your adulthood?
No,
how many times have you sat there and said, "Man, how did this happen? How did it get this bad?"
How did it?
Right? Like I mean, in several areas of my life, I've questioned that. You know what I'm saying? From a financial standpoint, and I mean, like I've bounced back from most of this stuff, but I'm just saying, like I've said that about my finances. I've said that about my health. I've said that about my like sort of like friendships with people or my jobs at certain points. I've said that about like my living situations. I've said that about I've said that about a lot of stuff because you just let one thing happen and then another thing happen and another thing happen. And then it's just like, dang, how did I let it? How did it get this bad? How did I get here?
Because it's been tainted.
And then you weren't paying attention to what God was telling you to do. I'm gonna be real. I wasn't. Oh man, I wasn't out there paying attention to what God was telling me to do. It was like, okay, yeah, God, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. I could just say that and be honest.
Tomorrow, God.
Okay, I got you, God. I know.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And then you get to that point where you're like, God, how did I get here? I need you. Please help me out of this situation.
He's like, okay.
Oh my God, this is horrible. But it's happened so many times in so many different ways in my life.
Yes.
I mean, whatever He has for us to do must be great because there are some situations there I've dodged a lot of things.
I
did not deserve to get out of.
I've dodged. And people that know me know. That's all I'm gonna say.
Anyway, all right, listen. Let's not,
that's all I'm going to say, man. So,
let's not go all the way there. Okay, so that's why God didn't want them there.
To taint it, man.
You got to drive them Canaanites out. Yeah. How many of y'all have Canaanites in your life? And it may not be people. It might be habits. It might be,
it could be anything.
It could be a lot of things. Like we're just defining Canaanites as something that God told you to get rid of.
Yeah, it could be
like
simple thing.
What are the Canaanites in your life that God told you to get rid of?
I'll give you a simple example, guys.
Okay.
A game called RuneScape.
Oh my gosh, you can't be saying that.
Oh my bad. It's a game. And anyway, this is what we're talking about driving out Canaanites. It doesn't have to be a person. But this game, I used to just play it. And it consumed my time. And next thing I know, it's consuming my money. And next thing I know, it's like, oh man, you know what? When I get off work, I'm going to watch the football game. And then I'm going to play the game. I'm only going to play it 30 minutes. And then 30 minutes turns into an hour. Then I sleep, I wake up like, you know what, I'm not doing nothing to play the game. So now that's just one thing that happened to me. It's other things that's going on, guys. If you know me, you know. But that's the one simple thing that that I realized, this is taking too much of my time and I'm not gaining any value.
Yeah, I have some ideas of things. I'm just thinking of certain situations in my life where God told me to get rid of or leave certain people behind.
Yeah.
And I chose not to. And in those times, it came back that you should have just done what I told you to do when you did it. So that is just something. So we just want to know from you guys. Yeah. What Canaanites has God told you to get rid of in your life?
Yep. Now we're getting to...
And have you driven them out? Yeah. Okay.
Now we're getting to Deborah, who's the fourth judge. Deborah, man, she was a beast, man. She was, judges it's a little violent. I mean, listen, the Bible isn't... I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
It's violent stuff in here. It's real. I'll give you one of the kings that were at war with.
Talk about Sisera.
Sisera.
Now we in Judges 4.
Yep. 17.
Yeah, Judges 4. Judges 4. Oh, I was looking at Judges 4:21.
Yeah, there it is. 4:21. Here's 4:21, guys. Right? It says.
Well, I guess 17 would be where it started.
17 is where it started. It was this guy this king that Deborah was going to kill, right? And here it is. He goes into a tent, and Judges 4, verse 21. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg, took a hammer in her hand, and she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down to the ground while he was laying fast asleep from weariness. So he died. So this king was running from Deborah. He runs and he says, please, I just need sleep. You can have whatever you want. And they were like, sure. And then when he was asleep, she took a tent peg.
Yeah, I know what that looks like.
Sheesh.
And it's wild because as we were reading this, I remember thinking like, did I read that correctly?
Yeah,
I had to go back and reread it because I guess I just assumed that the Bible was like rated G or something. I don't know. I just was like shocked that like some of the stuff that's happening is like it's wild. I can't imagine someone I don't know, being bored by the story because just when you think, oh, okay, I get it, like something like that happens and you're like, what? Like somebody just got murked with a tent peg. Like what? So anyway.
This is a very interesting question. Reflect on any Deborahs of today who may be brushed off because of the misogynistic church undertones.
Ooh. This is, you know what? Teach Sunday school, they be getting deep with their questions, okay? Yeah. Because they're just assuming, like, because of misogynistic church undertones. They're assuming, I guess, that they still exist. I mean, obviously they do. So any Deborahs of today who might be brushed off because of misogynistic church, I wouldn't even take it outside of the church, but go ahead.
I'm going to answer this only because you as a young, beautiful black woman, I have probably a different perspective than I do because, I'm a man. I would just maybe say somebody who you just sent me to. Priscilla Shirer. Right. Yeah. Her, I can say Sarah Jakes Roberts. It's another good one. I think that sometimes sometimes churches will throw it out there where it's not good if a woman pastors, but I don't get it if the message is trying to get the word of Jesus Christ to get more people to believe in Him. Isn't that the whole point? Who knows what gift God has bestowed on somebody? We tend to forget that you keep living in these Old Testament laws. Now, I'm not talking about all of them, but some laws are ridiculous, and that's why Jesus came. Jesus adapted. He adapted to the times. So you can't say that God hasn't adapted. If He's given, Sarah Jakes Roberts a gift to be an orator and to tell her story to bring people to Jesus, God let it rock. Because you don't think God hasn't adapted. He's adapted every version of the Bible. And and there's Deborahs in the Bible. There's more Deborahs today than there was back then. Has to be, right? So, I mean, we would. I think you just take that into effect. That's all. That's just my perspective. Like,
Yeah, I mean those are good points. We wouldn't know if there were more, right? Because there are more people on the earth now than there were back then. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking even about percentage wise, we probably wouldn't know because most women's stories were not being told, and even if they were in here or being told, right, it was against the norm.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't know, but I would imagine that, there's definitely more Deborahs being recognized these days. But even like you said, even like they said, misogynistic church undertones. I'm gonna take it outside of the church. I feel like, in the world of politics, there are some Deborahs that don't get taken seriously because of misogynistic undertones, when people a lot of times don't like to listen to what women have to say. And I feel like this, women have to, uphold these norms in society to be sort of taken seriously, right? You have to dress a certain way. Don't wear that. That's too short. Don't wear that. That shows your cleavage. Don't say that. That's not polite. And you want to fit into this, these curtsy moments and these mom says this, this is how you're supposed to dress. You're supposed to wear tights. No white after Labor Day and all this. Meanwhile, men get away with locker room talk, and there are things that are being said by them that are completely false or ignorant. And then you have women who are making sense, and I'm speaking in the political world specifically, who are making sense based on logic, based on science, who are overlooked or unheard. Their words go unheard because of the way they dressed or the way their lipstick looked one day, or people make these jokes about them in the media that we should be paying attention to what they're looking like, as opposed to what they're actually saying and doing for their communities. So I think it's really interesting. I would name a few Deborahs that I feel are in the political arena, but I won't. Because I don't want to even let anybody know what kind of people I admire, or
Yeah, I got you.
I don't pick one side. I'm not just a fan of one political party, and I kind of I don't know how it is with sport. Sometimes with sports, people pick a team and that's their team and that's my ride or die team. And then other people are like, well, I like these players, and these players span all across other teams, right? I like LeBron, I like KD, I like so whoever, just depends on who's playing tonight, who I'm rooting for, you know what I mean? So that's kind of my thing with politics, but that kind of hit me in a political way more so than it did in a church way. If I was going to do a church way, I would go with the same people you said. Priscilla Schreier, definitely Sarah Jakes Roberts. She's been through a lot, and the fact that she's still standing up talking about God, I gotta give it to it. I gotta give it to her. She's so talented, right? So I think that as an orator and as a even as a thought leader, I'll give her that. But yeah, that's my answer. All right, we are long-winded today.
I love it. So this is it. Judges 6 through 8. It's another judge called Gideon.
Yes.
Gideon is
wild. Yeah. I have so much to say about Gideon. We might have to go over time a little bit today.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot. Gideon. All right, please continue.
Well, so Gideon. First of all, it's a lot to unpack about Gideon. The first thing about Gideon is that he doesn't believe in himself.
Yeah.
That's the first thing he says is God's like, hey man, I got you. I need you to be a next judge. And he says I'm weak. And God's like, no, you're not weak. You're about to be a judge. You're about to be remembered as being I'm going to make you do a great thing. And, you know, it just sometimes reminds me of how I talk to myself, or how you might talk to yourself. Sometimes I talk to myself in a very, you know, it's a thin line between being critical and then being negative, right? You can be critical on yourself, but not be negative. And sometimes you think that you're not the smartest person in the room, or you're too weak, or people don't take you seriously. And once again, the past lessons of if you're tainted, you end up becoming that person. If you talk to yourself in a negative light, you end up becoming that person and not believing in yourself. When the whole time God is telling you, like, I chose you for this. Right? I've never seen God talk down on anybody. He gets angry and says, now, if you don't listen to me, I'll harden this person's heart, or I'll, you know, you gotta be you're not gonna be in the wilderness. I've never seen him say you're too weak to do it. It's always the person. It's always us that says, man, I can't do it. Yeah. Yes, you can. Where did that even come from? You know? So that's kind of what you know, what I have to say about Gideon. And you know, get another thing. Gideon was, the Lord told him to take down the bull, and the Gideon was scared because of his family and the men of the town. Listen, what that taught me is sometimes we're afraid to be ourselves and live in our truth, and we're afraid about what other people say about us. We're afraid what everybody else says about us, and we're not paying attention to God, who's telling us to be great. That's what happens to me. So, you know, and now as I'm reading the Bible, I'm like, man, you know, God's telling me, you know, do not fear and follow your passion and talk about it. And I'm living my lessons in my life. I'm learning through reading about Gideon, you know, and about Moses and about Joseph. All these lessons that I take out the Bible have to do with me. Yeah. You know, so so, you know, and we'll get to what Gideon does after, I think, 8. But you know, so Gideon took 300 men and beat 120,000.
Yeah, that was wild. With God's help.
With God's help.
Can I say something about Gideon? Yeah. Just right in the beginning of Judges 6. Or actually, was it the beginning? It was, anyway, Judges 6, 9, where they kind of go over like how God rescued the Israelites from the hands of the Egyptians and who oppressed them, and you know, he said to them, "I'm the Lord your God. You shall not fear the other gods." And he's saying that you have not listened to it and obeyed my voice. Yeah. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat, and Gideon said to the angel, or actually to the Lord, why has all this happened to us? And where are all God's wondrous works, right? Which our fathers told us about. It struck me so hard when I read that, which is now I'm on Judges 6:13, because I was like, it's so funny how his fathers passed down the story of God's promises, but somehow they didn't, you know, mention that, like, oh, also we've been being disobedient, and that's why the Lord isn't blessing us, and that's why we keep getting oppressed by different, you know, groups of people, because we're not paying attention to what God said. So when Gideon's saying, like, please, if God is with us, then why has all this happened to us? I think I'm definitely guilty of saying those words too, like, why me? You know what I'm saying? But in some cases, it's not like necessarily what you did. It's just like, why not you? Right? Like, life happens to everybody. But I thought that was interesting. And the one thing that always jumps, I mean, because God has said this before in the Bible, and I've read other parts of the Bible where he said this, but God says to Gideon, have I not sent you? Have I not commanded you? Right? Judges 6:14. What does yours say? Does it say commanded, or does it
Judges
say
6:14?
The last line of Judges 6:14.
It says, do not I send you?
Right, have I not sent you? And this kind of reminds me of back when Moses was like, you want me to speak?
Yeah.
Like, certainly not me. Certainly you must have meant somebody else. How many times, right? Have you said that, where it's just like you have an opportunity, or you see something that that you know that you need to do, and it's like, oh, but not me, somebody else, right? Not me. And it's like, if you would just sit down and realize that, like, if it's your desire and God gave you the desire, right? Like, maybe it is you. Has God not sent you? Right? So it's like God will give you something to do that could be scary, but he did. He chose you. If you're thinking of it, if you're the one carrying the, message in the bottle, then yeah, you're supposed to deliver it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. And you talked about how Gideon was really, he didn't really have a healthy self-image. And in my version of the Bible, which is the Joyce Meyer Everyday Life Bible Amplified version, Joyce Meyer breaks down how to have a healthy self-image, and she just mentions, like, I know God created me and he loves me even though I have faults and weaknesses. I want to change. I believe God is working in my life. Everyone has faults. You're not a complete failure just because you're not perfect. And a lot of these things are drawn. She has a whole list of 12, but I'll say that's another thing that I'm getting from picking up through reading the Bible, is that all of these people who served God that are in the Bible, whose stories are written, they all have flaws. And not one of them up to this point didn't have a flaw, or didn't question God, or didn't question their own abilities. I'm not saying they all question God, but they all have flaws. They all had lives, outside of serving God. It's like, they were living just like we're living, and he still made promises to them, and he still kept those promises. So I just like to think of that when I'm, feeling like, oh, I can't do it. It's just like, God put me here, like I'm here, like I'm here though, right? Yeah. Like, so there's got to be something to that, right? Yeah. So anyway,
it's gotta be. It's gotta be something to that.
Okay, let's get into this last question. I feel like we were so long-winded.
Oh, before, I did want to mention this. So Gideon saved Israel, right? And now Gideon, the men of Israel, Gideon 8, verse 22. The men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us and your son and your grandson also, for he saved us from the hand of Midian. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. Right? So then he builds this ephod, and what happens is he built an I made a note about this. He built an idol, not an altar. And we got to be careful of making idols and not making altars.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what happened. He built a idol, put it in the city, and then all of Israel, my Bible says, whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. So what happens was, as soon as Gideon passed away, the people of Israel did not remember the Lord.
Man.
They did not remember who took them away from their enemies. And they did not show Jabal, who is Gideon, his family love. And then they were worshiping another false idol. So that was good. Now, this is the last question. This is interesting. So, picking soldiers over drinking practices is ridiculous. What was God trying to demonstrate?
Okay, so what is being referred to is when Gideon was about to. So this is going back a little bit before what you just mentioned about the false idol that he built. Yeah. This is before they went into war. Yeah. So Gideon was taking people to war, but then God basically came to him and was like, "You have too many people," and so he told them to send a number of people away. Like, okay, if first send home all the people who don't want to be here. Mm-hmm. Okay, still there's too many. Okay, now send home people who do this or do that, whatever. Mm-hmm. Right? So he starts giving him these like tests or whatever to put them through. And then there was one where he was like, take them down to the river.
7-4.
Take them down to the river, and where is it? I'm sorry.
7-4.
Okay, take them down to the river and have them drink water. And the people who drink like lap the water with their hand. Yeah. Like whoever laps the water, take them to war. Whoever doesn't, like whoever picks the water up with their hands, send them home. It seemed at the time like, what does that have to do with fighting? And you made a funny joke about like, if they drink like dogs, they gonna fight.
Savages.
But I just feel like this. I think what is said in the text was God didn't want too many Israelites to go to war because he wanted it to be clear that it wasn't them who won, it was God who won it for them. And maybe if so many people would have gone, they would have been patting themselves on the back like, yeah, we did that, as opposed to what really happened, which was God showing up with those 300 and having their backs, and they got rid of hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah. So it was, or they defeated hundreds of thousands of people. So I think it was, I think that's what it was. I think God was trying to demonstrate that. I think in the beginning with that first send home of like separate the people who want to be here from the people who probably just feel obligated to go because it's like, okay, I guess I gotta go fight. First thing he did was like send those people home. I kind of understood that, like, you don't want people fighting alongside you if they don't really want to be there, because they're kind of gonna put you at risk. If they're not all in, they're not gonna do their best. That's what I kind of assumed. If you don't want to be here, then you're not gonna do your best. But and that's my assumption. I don't know that to be true. But then as it goes to the drinking practices, then it just seemed kind of like silly. Like, okay, now we're just sending people home because we have too many. Yeah.
I think that's what he was trying to demonstrate. Just selecting few, we'll never know. But what I think is he picked the people that drink like a dog because they are savages and they're ready for war, right? But I'm just joking, guys. I think God wanted I think a simple form is savages just it's like, yo, you're about to go hard, man. But no, it's like no, all jokes aside, right? I mean, think about it.
Look, it could be true.
You're at a brook
and
you see a dude just stick his head and just lick it. You're like, you know what?
I want you to fight with me. I want you on my side because you get ready.
You don't really care. Some would say you don't care about life when you just stick your head in the brook, right? But I think God is he's just trying to demonstrate. I think he was just trying to demonstrate how to pick people. I think it was just a strange ritual, and I think God was just like, I think it was just a direction that he was going. So, I think that's it. That's it. Sis. We never know,
Well, guys.
That's it.
That's it for this week. We appreciate you tuning in. I gotta say a couple of shout outs, right? Gonna shout out ReTV and Miss Damita Jo. Definitely gonna shout them out. I'm gonna shout out myself this week because I actually have content finally. Come on over to Yes, I'm a Unicorn, where we talk about everything planning, productivity, I love planners. I love like just writing things out, making sense of things through mind maps and bullet journaling. So if you like that kind of stuff, or if you're just curious, or maybe I have some tips on how you can, better manage your workday or something like that. Like if you are interested in that, you should come on over and see me. Also, I got to give a shout out to my other podcast, Those Two Sisters. We're coming back. We're coming back for season 2 this week. So look out for us on Thursday nights. Yep. Those Two Sisters live. And that's going to be on Miss Damita Jo's channel. Another shout out this week to a person or a group, a platform that we shouted out last week because they actually were talking about prayer in this most recent thing we were watching. But shout out to Social Proof, Donnie Wiggins, David Shands. They're really doing good work in the space of entrepreneurial just teaching and coaching, and I just want to shout them out because I don't really know how many people are doing that, but I just know that they're doing a really good job and they're keeping it fresh and fun and informative, and I just really appreciate the work they're doing, so shout out to them.
Shout out to Fourth Quarter. It's a podcast that I have with my friends that we just talk about sports from a fan's perspective. Sometimes you get tired of listening to mainstream media because it's almost one voice and you hear it over and over again. So just, sometimes you get tired of it if you like me, and you just reach out to other platforms. So it's good content, and I love sports and I love to talk about it. So that's shout out to Fourth Quarter, and I want to give a shout out to my man Chanel Martin. Shout out to you guys. This is great apparel. Actually, I'm gonna buy some more shirts for my cousin Wardy. I'll definitely shout him out. So, but that's it, man. That's all my shout outs, and of course shout out Social Proof. The funny thing is the clip that we watched from Social Proof kind of ties in with Judges. Because what they said was...
It does! Yep. That's so wild.
Yeah.
We're connected, guys. We're connected together.
Is it wild or is it crazy or is it God?
It is. It's crazy and it's God. It's both. So shout out to everybody who... is watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
We see y'all back out there now that we're out here with season 2.
Yeah.
I see y'all liking and we've got a few new subscribers, and please just continue to support. Follow us on all the platforms.
Yeah.
And we like to see your comments, so don't be afraid to comment. If you like something or if you have a comment on one of our posts, please give us your take on it.
That's it.
And we'll see you again next week. But before we go, we gotta say, don't take our word for it.
Go to the source.
Read your Bible.
All right, guys.
Bye.